Hello and welcome to a very special edition of our ongoing webinar series. I'm Andy North. I am the CMO here at Tax Calc. Today we are extremely excited to share with you the outcome of a project that we've been working on really since the beginning of the year, in which we hope will be an invaluable tool to help you prepare for everything that's going to be coming with MTD for ITSA. I'm joined today once again by our Director of Product Compliance, Dean Shepherd, and also Ariona Bayracorte, who is the Managing Director of Majors Accounts based in South East London. Ariona was one of the key contributors to this project, so I wanted to thank her once again for lending us her time today. Thank you. Before we start, some housekeeping. Yes, we will be sending a recording of this to everyone who is registered, so don't worry about taking too many notes if you don't want to. If you have a question, we will be taking those both throughout and at the end. Please post those in the Q&A box in the corner. Only the presenters will see those questions. If you want to post something for everyone else or the audience will see, then use the chat box. That's for you to chat amongst yourselves. We won't be monitoring that throughout, so we won't see comments that you've posted into there. So before we get into the details of the session, it's worthwhile providing a little bit of context around this. So we were polling the end of last year around how well prepared most accountants and particularly our customers were regarding MTD. And the number of firms that were rating themselves as either novice or having no coherent plan at all was often in the high 70s, 70, 80%, which was very concerning to us. May or may not be a surprise to you, but it was very concerning to us. And another area that we were concerned about was that whilst there was a lot of content being offered to accountants around how to prepare, a lot of it was very much focused on what to worry about. So you need to worry about your clients, you need to worry about your staff and your technology, but not a great deal of practical solutions were being offered. So we wanted to try and fill that gap and provide a tool for small firms to be able to know that they're prepared, to prepare and to know that they're being prepared. So we brought together a crack team of our own customers, some of whom were very, very well versed in MTD. Some were advising the Hmrc on what to do and how they were going to do it, but others were also just starting out on their journey. So we wanted to get a real mix. So we workshopped extensively around a plan to come up with a comprehensive guide. And that's culminated in this, which is the SimpleStep guide to MTD Readiness. It's a complete plan that will take you from right now, right up to April 2024. It lays out the actions that you need to be taking, what decisions you need to make. More importantly, it gives you advice on when to make them, and there's a timeline in there. And it also provides some definitions of done so that you know when you've achieved each step. So it's really for you to either just adopt or to adapt to your own firm. But in the absence of any other planning, you've now got this. So today we're going to walk you through the key steps that are included in the guide. But before we do that, we've got a question for you. Dean.
Okay, thank you, Andy. So we're going to have our first poll of the day. And this is to find out where you are on your MTD for ITSA journey. So hopefully you'll see the poll come up on your screens. If you haven't seen that pop up, you should see an option for polls next to the questions and chat on the bottom right hand corner of your browser. If you click on the polls one, then you should now see the poll running to see whereabouts you are on your MTD for ITSA journey. So whether you're burying your head in the sand, peeking out above the parapet, jumping in with both feet, or MTD for ITSA, completed it, mate. What about you, Ariona? Completed it? All good to go?
See, I'd say we're in between the last two, right? 'Cause we're ready as a firm. It's just making sure that our clients are also on board and understanding it. So we're ready to absorb all of those clients.
Great. So there aren't so many joining you in being quite ready, Ariona. The greater proportion are peaking out above the parapet, so around 70% at that level, which I think is probably what we're expecting there, Andy. Not many that are completely ready for it, but we do have some time, and hopefully the strategies that we're going to share with you today will help you feel a bit more prepared, particularly if you get your hands on a copy of the guide and start working through that. Okay, so I shall just end that poll. And let's go on to our first topic. So the first strategy that we came up with as a team was all about the importance of having clearly defined services in your practice so that both your team and your clients can understand what they'll need come April 24. Ariona, have you already determined what additional services your clients are going to need?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important to understand what you need to do first, right, before you communicate it to clients. So, of course, compliance is something that we're going to be providing, but instead of once a year, it will now be 5 times a year. But with the information that we will have available to us, we will be able to then provide extra services to this kind of cohort of clients which maybe don't get it as much. Things like management accounts, advisory on kind of what they can do on their business, what the information means, translating it and see how they can make a difference to their business. App advisory, I think, is something that will come naturally out of this because they're going to have to be using different apps in order to ensure all of their information is in one place. So kind of seeing which apps work for which business, or depending the industry that they're in. In terms of, I guess, things that we're not going to be offering as much, I think the ad hoc services, I see those dying away slightly just because we're going to have a lot more communication and contact with our clients than we probably did before, especially with those once a year landlords or self-employed individuals. So the ad hoc things will start to reduce, I guess.
So I would say that when we were putting this together, one of the most contentious topics was where to start. And it was a bit of a circular argument where some people felt that it was better to start by defining your services, others to start looking at technology or your clients first. For the purposes of getting started, we took defining your services as the first one, and you'll see in the guide that that's the where we advise starting off. But of course, it's something that you may want to adapt for your firm and start in a slightly different place. But we felt that understanding what you need to offer was by far the most important thing. So, Dean, what do we do next after the definition of services?
Okay. Well, strategy 2 is all about evaluating your client base and getting a really good understanding of the makeup of your client base so that you know exactly who is or isn't going to be affected by MTD for ITSA and when. We've talked before about segmenting your client base so that you do have that good understanding. I know some practices feel they've got an idea of what proportion of their clients are sole traders, partnerships, companies, but have they really gone to the level of running reports and being able to identify for sure when people are going to fall within MTD for ITSA and what their digital start date would be. Ariona, how far have you got in terms of segmenting your clients?
Luckily, we actually use Tax Calc as our client database. So we've got all of our clients in there because this can be a really daunting exercise to do, especially when you've got the larger client base. So with that client base in Tax Calc, we run a report to identify all of those who are self-employed and landlords. Once we've got that report, we then segment that further into 3 tiers of clients. One who we feel will be very comfortable with it, and with a little bit of persuasion, they will be kind of happy to join and change their ways of working. The second would be those that, we really need to speak to them a little bit more. It will take a little bit more persuasion, but generally they will get there. And then I guess the larger group will be those that will say, absolutely not, I'm not doing this, this can't be a thing for us. And then based on these groups, it will determine how we communicate with them. So the first group, it may just be an email. Some of them may just get on board with what they need to do from that email. The second may need a phone call just to explain it a little bit more. And the third group, I wouldn't probably even entertain an email. I would just ask them to come into the office. We speak to them face to face, show them what we want to do in terms of, the tech that they need and how it's going to affect them. And generally, that's kind of the only way to get them on board. And that's what we did with MTD for VAT as well. So yeah, doing it this way, we have found to be, the most effective way. And there will be some, unfortunately, that may not kind of agree, but it's important to at least have this plan in place to give you an idea of, to help you get to where you need to be.
Right. And I know when I speak to practices, the makeup of different people's practices is going to be a little bit different, and the types of clients that they serve. So everyone's going to be impacted to a greater or lesser degree with MTD. Do you know sort of roughly what proportion of your clients are going to be impacted by this?
I'd say 50% of our clients. We've got about a 50-50 split between limited companies and self-employed individuals. So we're looking at about 1,000 people that will be affected in our client base. But we've actually started that kind of process now with those who are coming to do their tax returns, just speaking to them, letting them know, and using the apps that we have available as well to get them started now.
Great.
So there's a lot of advice in the guide around that segmentation process, and I think that three-tier approach was the majority of the people in the Brain Trust were eager to go with. So that was a particularly important one. And by the way, I should add that if you're working on the timeline in the guide, these are all really just start now. These are really early on. And the third one of those, Dean, is?
Well, the third strategy is about monitoring your client base on an ongoing basis. Because we have talked before about how to segment a client base, and as Ariona says, it's something you can do within our software suite. But you don't just want to do that as a one-off exercise. You're going to be taking on clients. Ariona talked about whether clients are going to be savvy with the technology, whether they're going to be engaging or not. Their attitude towards that might change over a period of time. So you want a system to be able to monitor your clients on an ongoing basis, so you've always got a live feel for who's affected to what degree and how you're going to be able to cope with that. So Ariona, what kind of systems do you have in place to continually monitor your client base?
To be honest, we're really kind of plunging into this now. As I mentioned, with anyone who's coming to do tax returns now, we're speaking to them about it, showing them the apps and actually getting them to use them. The idea is showing them now and showing them how easy it is before there are deadlines, before there are penalties, before it gets kind of nervous, am I doing the right thing or not? We're introducing it to them so they can see actually it's not that difficult. And yes, right now they may only be doing it once a year, but I think as we've got 2 more years left, we'll be able to encourage them to start using them on a daily basis. Obviously during that time, some will go from kind of absolutely not to actually this is not too bad. We'll start using this, but it's difficult to monitor. But I think once you've put some parameters like we will not accept paperwork in any other way apart from using our apps, that's quite a good kind of indicator to see who's doing what. And for us as a firm, we've just said no, we're not going to accept it if you don't use them anyway, and that's starting from this year. So hopefully with things like this, it should help to really push everyone on that scale.
So I was going to ask about because one of the things that the guide talks about is that process of the 10K threshold. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be businesses that you work with who may drop in and out of MTD as time goes on. Yep. How are you tackling that? Because that could be tricky.
No, we've come up with a blanket idea. We've said, we're going to put everybody on this system regardless.
Right.
At the end of the day, the guidance says that, if you do fall out of it, you have to show that you've fallen out for 3 years. At that point, we know that self-employed individuals' income fluctuates. it's not going to be feasible for us to keep monitoring that and working with people in a different way. Because someone could say, I don't want to be an MTD, and they may not qualify. But how are we going to fit that into our work to make sure that we satisfy their needs and those that have MTD? And it gets to a point where it's difficult to control.
Yeah.
So we've just said, everyone on MTD.
And I guess, if you have been doing this for 3 years or however long, it's probably harder to stop and then start. So you might as well just carry on.
Exactly.
So the 10K threshold is not a factor.
Exactly. Not just that, but you'd have to monitor it, right? And if they do come out, and then let's say the next year you found that mid-year they've actually fallen straight into MTD again, we won't know. And then they'll get penalties, and then we'll get blamed anyway, because we seem to get blamed for everything.
Yeah, of course.
So it's just easier this way.
Yeah. And I guess once you've got clients into the habit of keeping their records up to date quarterly and getting you that information, then you don't really want them falling back into the once a year job that they might have been before.
Exactly.
So just before we carry on and get on to the fourth piece here, people are asking questions around how they get hold of the guide. I didn't want to blow my big reveal at the end, but to everyone who is attending today, you will be sent a copy of this electronically. So that will trample on my announcement later, which is a shame. But I just wanted to let you know. So Dean, we're still in the early part. So over the next sort of 2 or 3 months, these are the things that we need to be tackling.
Yeah, and actually we have had another question about what apps area owner uses, which I think is a good segue onto the next section, which is your strategy around technology. What apps are out there? What do you need to do from a technology perspective to make sure that both your practice and your clients are in a good place come April 24. Now, I know, every owner, you've been able to transform what was a very traditional practice into what is now a fully digital practice. So I think it'd be really interesting to hear how you went about that process and what sort of applications you're using.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to explain the term traditional. When I say traditional, we were a firm where we'd get bags of receipts once a year that were dirty. The ink has probably already gone, and we'd only see those clients once a year. So that's how traditional we were. We used Excel extensively, and we didn't really have any other software within the business. So not tech savvy at all. Now we use technology for pretty much everything. I think Excel was used randomly. So we've really changed. And to start off this process, and especially when you're a traditional firm or established firm, it's difficult because you've got to completely change your processes, change the way you work. And, something that so far has worked well, it's been profitable, it's grown successful. You've got to almost destroy that and start again. That's with the processes and everything else. That's what it feels like. So when starting this process, I decided to take it step by step because it is overwhelming. There is so much to do. And the first kind of step that I took was introducing a bookkeeping package, because that is where the majority of our processes would be. And sure, we've got all of our clients on one package. Now, there are so many out there, and I know some accountants use loads of different ones at the same time, but if you haven't started yet, and this was the same for us, I didn't want to overwhelm our team, and I just chose one. They're all pretty similar, but when you've got so many things to learn, let's just stick to one that works well, and then build up on that. So we use QuickBooks Online, which is what we started with. Then at this point, obviously the clients don't really care what you're using. So it doesn't really matter in terms of trying to get clients on board here. This is just getting your internal or your house ready. Then we needed to figure out how are we going to get that information from clients in a digital format. So the next natural step was digital receipt capture. So we use Dext, which integrates seamlessly with QuickBooks Online. And it was really easy for clients, it's just taking a picture. I used to say to them, can you use Facebook? They're like, yeah, absolutely. Well, if you can use Facebook, you can use this app. It's much easier. So in some instances, it was actually bringing some clients into the office. As I mentioned earlier, with the different types of clients, there was one client, 6 businesses, absolutely not going to do it. He kind of, didn't go onto it for about a year. And he came in, I showed him, he was like, is that it? All 6 businesses all in one go. So sometimes that's kind of what you need to do. The next step, tax preparation software. Obviously, Tax Calc, again, was the natural step because of the software and what it provides, but also the integration with QuickBooks, which was really important. Sorry. And then the next stage that I looked into was online document management system. With GDPR, we weren't able to send any information out by email anymore. So we needed a system where it kind of is in the cloud. It's not in our server. Our clients can access it whenever they need to. So we went with Smart Vault, again, which integrates with Tax Calc. So we created a process from start to finish that integrates seamlessly to get rid of that human element in terms of having the ability for human error. So they're kind of the main things that I would say to start with. Any other apps will come naturally depending on what your business needs and how you work. But I think these are kind of the bread and butter apps that I kind of talk about within the firm. And then you can look at more bespoke softwares and see what you need after that.
Yeah, I've had some more questions come in. A reminder that for anybody asking for the guide, that we will provide you with a digital copy following the end of the webinar, and Andy will also give you some details about where you can get hold of a physical copy to take back to the office. So we've had a question about getting clients on board. You mentioned the example where you brought someone in and basically demonstrated that. Do you have any other advice for getting clients on board that don't currently use any kind of apps at the moment? You must have had some struggles with some clients.
Yeah, I mean, we brought clients on board that didn't even have an email address. So it was as simple as creating an email address for them and guiding them throughout this process. We saw it as an investment because in the long run, this was actually going to be a lot better for us in how we communicate with clients, and then it will benefit the clients too. But it is working together with them and hand-holding, unfortunately, at the start. There's not much you can do in terms of, pushing them or anything. You need to help them out, understand that it's difficult for them. As I mentioned, if they don't have an email, then all of this is going to be a huge shock to them. But helping them out throughout has kind of helped us now.
Yeah. Again, the questions are flowing in, particularly on the technology side. You mentioned the document management system that you use. What system is that?
That's Smart Vault.
Okay.
And that integrates with Tax Calc as well, which has been a lifesaver for us. Great.
And also you said that you use QuickBooks Online. We're being asked, does that mean that every one of your clients therefore has to buy a subscription to accounting software such as?
So we actually include that as part of our package. But we don't take on clients that are on any other packages. So, that's a decision that we made that has been better for us and for our team. And at the end of the day, as I mentioned, clients don't really care whether you're using QuickBooks or Xero or any other ones.
Yeah, and that was a decision you made independently of MTD for its coming into effect.
Yeah.
Great.
So we are going to be, there is a great deal in the guide around technology, and we're still in the area of the beginning. We're still in the mid, coming into the autumn now. And at that point we get into sort of October time and we start thinking of the next stage and what's recommended next.
Okay. Just another question has just come in before I'll move on to the next subject area on technology. So we've had a question about spreadsheets, whether they can be submitted quarterly with MTD and the end of period statement creation with the year-end adjustments. Just to clarify that, yes, you can use spreadsheets as an acceptable digital record under MTD for ITSA, just like you can with MTD for VAT. And just as we have VAT Filer within our software suite for filing the VAT returns, you will be able to use Business Filer if you wish to keep certain clients using spreadsheets, perhaps those simpler ones, perhaps property landlords for whom a full bookkeeping application might be a little bit overkill. So yes, that will be an option within the Tax Calc software suite. So the next strategy area that we looked at, which probably generated the most heated parts of the discussion as a group, because I think there were lots of strong opinions on this particular area, and that's on the subject of pricing which of course can be very emotive. Lots of people use different pricing methodologies within the group. But Ariona, what have you been thinking about and focusing on in terms of pricing for MTD?
Yeah, I mean, the way that we've looked at this, you have two options, right? You're going to have to submit 5 times a year instead of 1. So we know that. You have 2 options. Are you going to reduce your client base to be able to satisfy, this new kind of compliance that we'd have to do? Or are you going to add more staff to be able to satisfy the same client base? Either way, you're going to have to increase price for this. Just it won't be sustainable otherwise. What we're doing is we're kind of speaking to clients and saying, yes, there will be a price increase. It's inevitable. However, if you are using the apps that we give you and the processes that we've put in place, our fee doesn't need to increase 5 times. And apart from that, you will be getting a better service because we have that information now, not a year later or 8 months after that year. So it really depends on the processes that you've got in your practice, I would say, in terms of how much the price will increase, but it will have to. It's inevitable.
Are you already having those pricing conversations with clients to set them up for when it's going to happen?
Yeah, we're getting them used to that now. And actually, we've started to provide the service for MTD now anyway, for those clients that say, actually, I do want some more information. I do want you to be more involved. So we're getting that experience with those clients now. But we are letting them all know, by the way, this is kind of 2 years max. It's going to change after this.
What has the reaction been in the main? Have you had a lot of kickback? Have there been some unpleasantness?
We've had quite a few different reactions. Some have been really worried. Those that are worried makes me think, okay, they're understanding what we're saying. But others are saying, no, they can't do that. They can't do that to us. Going from 1 to 5 times a year, how are we going to afford that? I don't even earn that much. Why should I have to pay for? So we've had quite a few different reactions, but I think it's important to let them know now because they're going to speak to their friends. One, I guess, thing that we've had, which has not been great, is as we're talking about it, the majority of the accounting industry are not talking about this. So when they ask their friend down the pub, my accountant said this. I said, what are you talking about? My accountant hasn't told me anything about that. They can't do that. That's such a massive change. Trust me, it's not going to happen. So we've had some backlash with that, but I think as we get closer to the time, then they will start to see. Actually, this is something that we spoke about a long time ago, so it's definitely going to happen.
Well, I mean, in the guide, we talk a lot about that process of client encouragement, of client education, I should say. And as an interesting question has been posted here, will you be preparing a standard letter as a guide which can be adapted and sent to clients to explain the requirements, which I think is a wonderful idea. And yes, I would like to say we will be doing that. And we would very much appreciate your assistance in doing so. So we'll follow up with you on that potentially.
I could just add, Andy, that in the guide we've got links to various little hints and tips websites that explain how you can do certain things within Tax Calc that are going to help you with MTD. And we do have an explainer video on how to create standard letters and use data mining to identify exactly which clients you want those letters to go to and have those sent out automatically via Communication Centre. So there's lots of little handy kind of tech tips within the guide of video explainers.
I do like that idea. One last question before we move on from the pricing issue, and it's probably the burning one, and I don't know how detailed you want to get, but what kind of percentage increase are you predicting for your clients?
I'm looking at about 50%.
50%?
Yeah, so. Just because apart from the compliance and the 5 times a year, we're actually going to be providing a lot more information. So I think that increase is justified in what we're going to be able to give those clients. And then obviously depending on how much information they want, there will be different kind of levels to that service. Yeah. But again, that will depend on the particular client and what they need. Yeah.
So it comes back again to that original point of defining your services. We talk about a bronze, a silver and a gold level of service that clients can opt into. So that may well be one of the solutions there. So I would like to move on because we're going to run out of time. we would like to ask you one more question based on what we've heard so far. Where we're at in the timeline is now realistically towards the back end of this year. So out of those, the areas that we've discussed so far, which ones concern you the most?
So we've got that poll running now. Again, hopefully that's popped up on your screen. If it hasn't, look for the little polls option in the bottom right-hand corner of your browser, and we'll see what results that starts to show. Okay, which of those sort of areas that we've discussed so far do you think concern you the most, area owner in your practice?
I'd say pricing. That's going to be, that discussion with clients, that increase, even with 50%, is quite a big increase, and these are kind of like the smaller end of businesses that we're talking about. They're not those that are earning low to an increase like that. They can absorb it somehow. So that's going to be, I think, the most difficult conversation. It's all well and good having everything ready. They're going to be compliant. But when it comes to this, how much it's going to cost you, I think we'll be having a lot of back and forth at that point.
Yeah, we had another question come in actually asking whether you'd be encouraging any of your clients to submit the MTD returns themselves rather than you take on the work.
See, I am really reluctant with things like that, even for MTD for VAT, for example, just because I've found from experience it costs a lot more to fix errors than it is for us to submit it correctly the first time. I know a lot of accountants do that, but are you going to consider how much you're going to, in some cases you need to redo it completely. Are you going to charge for that? Are they going to accept that extra charge? At that point, we're just going to be saying, no, this is how much we charge, otherwise, we're not doing it. Just because I can imagine the conversations and the arguments of, no, why are you doing this? We're going to have to start teaching them basically as well how it needs to be done and explaining why things were incorrect. That doesn't mean everyone will get that, but that's just from our experience what we found.
Yeah. There was a question posted earlier around what the implications would be of just posting 000 and then wrapping up at the end, which we have addressed in a previous webinar. But do you want to quickly touch on that now? Or
yeah, sure. It's certainly not something that we would recommend doing. Bearing in mind these are digital submissions, they're going into a database that Hmrc is going to, their data scientists are going to be rubbing their hands with glee at the opportunity to analyse this data and see what they can find. So I think submitting 4 nil returns and then correcting everything on the end of period submission is going to be a pretty bad move for your client. But that said, the quarterly submissions, they're a submission, they're not a tax return themselves. You don't have to worry about all the kind of usual end of year adjustments that you would put through. They're not prepared to gap. It's an update of the bookkeeping. So I think as long as the bookkeeping is reasonable, then you don't have to worry about all the same kinds of end of year adjustments that you would normally do, unless of course having that more accurate quarterly management account figures is going to open up opportunities for you to provide valuable information for your clients that are going to help them run their business. So there are going to be businesses that are going to be forced down this digital route for whom there is benefit for them having those management accounts that they don't currently buy from you. But there will also be much smaller clients for whom it's not really of value for their day-to-day decision making, and you won't need to do that level of kind of adjustment quarterly.
I would say we are getting a lot of questions that are coming in around the technicalities of MTD, which we kind of expected. We'll try and get back to you individually on those, but we're going to try and focus more on this, which is the kind of process of getting to MTD rather than the technicalities, because there are a lot of questions coming in around subcontractors, etc. And yes, we have run a series of webinars around the technical details before. We will be updating those and they will be coming up. You can access them from the Tax Calc website. So, do we get to the results of the survey?
Yes,
poll?
we did. So, like area owner, pricing and positioning MTD services is concerning a lot of people on the call. So, 50% of people says that's their biggest concern. Second up is deciding what technology that they need. 31%, which I think is fair. And we can't answer all those questions, because between now and April 24, you are going to see more and more products come onto the market to support you with MTD from ourselves and also other suppliers. So although you should be looking at technology and what you're going to need, you don't have the full range of what that software might look like, nor indeed the costs of some of the solutions that are going to come out in future. So it's an important one, but quite a tricky one as well.
Absolutely. Well, let's move on. There's still a lot to cover, and to reiterate to those people that have come late, the guide that we're referring to is the MTD SimpleStep guide to MTD Readiness, and that will be distributed to everyone who has turned up to the session today. So you will get a copy electronically. So we're moving now into very much the back end of 2022.
Okay. So this strategy number 6, if you like, is it's probably born from the lack of public awareness on MTD for income tax, and I think there's a feeling that Hmrc haven't really done a great deal in terms of advertising that MTD for income tax is coming. So by and large, your clients will probably never have heard about it if you haven't had those discussions or have been contacted them to talk about what's coming their way. Ariona, what sort of things have you been doing in terms of educating on clients on what's to come?
Yeah, so we have newsletters that go out every week, and there's usually something about MTD on there, kind of encouraging clients to attend webinars as well, or, to get a little bit more information. But I think the thing that's been working best for us has been actually speaking to them. When they come to the office, when we're on the phone to them, when I even have new or potential client meetings, we go through everything they need to know. But I let them know, this will only be this way for another couple of years. After that, you're going to have to do X, Y, Z. So letting everyone that we possibly can know now. But I think it is the speaking to them which has been the most beneficial for us. And I'm encouraging the whole team to do that, not just one person. So I think that's really important, to make sure everyone is aware. And you can't do it all yourself. You need to have the rest of the team as well speaking to clients on this.
Yeah, within the guide, we've got, we call it the roadmap, which is basically all these strategies on a timeline and letting you know when you need to start thinking about them and implementing them. And actually the education piece is one that kind of spans most of that timeline, because we feel you should be drip feeding all this information in now with your clients, with then a big build up and a push when it comes to fruition in April 24.
It is a real challenge. It's going to make life easier the more educated that they are. So moving on from that, you can probably guess what the next step is going to be on the flip side of educating your clients, and possibly even more crucial.
Yes, we talk about educating clients, but obviously educating your team is also going to be extremely important when it comes to MTD for income tax. And I'm always, I'm not comfortable with the word tax being in the description, making tax digital, because really it's about making business digital or making the bookkeeping digital. So actually I think it impacts on areas and members of your team within the practice that are probably less involved in the tax side of things. So Ariona, where do you stand in terms of bringing your team up to speed? Do you want everybody to have a good understanding, or are you just picking on certain people within the team?
No, we have the whole team. They all need to know what MTD is. Obviously, the level of knowledge that they have, a practice manager or an accounts or someone submitting tax, they will obviously know slightly more. However, it starts from the receptionist. They're the ones taking the first phone call, and whilst they're on the phone, they could mention to the client about MTD, or the client, imagine the client calls and says, I've heard of this thing called MTD. I'm not sure if it's going to affect me or not. I don't want the receptionist to say, that's interesting. Yeah, let me put you through to somebody who might know. We need to show them, yes, that is something that's coming. We're confident in it, and these are the basics. The receptionist can give those basics and then pass them on to somebody who knows slightly more. I think it's really important for the whole team to be on board, and we regularly attend any kind of events on this, webinars, just because each webinar could have some slightly different or new information which we may not have known, because at the moment it's kind of speculation, right? So we're just trying to get as much information as possible. So having that information, I think, is really important, because that is what will then help us to help clients and provide confidence to the clients as well, that we know what we're doing. We're not just saying, yeah, I think it's about this. You know, we're up to date.
Well, I think that's a really good point. I think getting that initial point to everyone in the firm is up to speed. I mean, we're getting questions. We've had, I don't know, a couple of dozen around, is this really happening from this group?
Yeah.
And if your clients are saying, well, is this really happening? They need to have a broad side of information that it is. You told me earlier about a situation that you had in your firm relating to the technology, that you had an issue with some of your staff.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the process of us going digital, I guess. And, you know, not everybody is on board with that. And again, it's something that's new, right?
Yeah.
So it's ensuring that they understand how this will affect the business, our clients and themselves, and ensuring they understand that well. Because if they don't, it can really negatively affect the business.
I see. Okay. So,
We have had some more questions.
oh, you want to quickly jump
Andy,
in?
That, I think we can answer some of these. Again, lots of tech questions, which I think we can probably expect, given that we're a tech company. We had a question: can your bridging software be used by a client to do their quarterly submissions? Not really, because at the moment you could be using our VAT filer as bridging software for doing quarterly submissions, but actually when MTD for ITSA comes in, that's a completely separate submission to your VAT return, even if you align your ITSA quarters with your VAT quarters, or more correctly, change your VAT quarters to match your ITSA quarters, because they'll be set in stone. But you'll have to do two separate submissions for the same client, even if you're running them to the same quarter. Not everyone's aware of that. I've had a question or a statement. Hmrc say that they will be providing free software. Is this true? It depends where you hear that from. Hmrc have always said that they won't be providing free software, and that commercial software suppliers they're going to look to provide something for free. Hmrc have said that they will have some limited software that will allow individuals to submit the information over and above the quarterly business data or property data. But as things stand, Hmrc won't be providing any option. So your only option is to use commercial software, either paid for, like we provide at Tax Calc, or Hmrc, I think, are keeping their fingers crossed and hoping that there'll be enough commercial suppliers that will produce something, perhaps with limited functionality for free, that people could use that otherwise don't have the means to pay for software. Another request for printed copy of the guide, which Andy's keen to tell you how to get your hands on a copy at the end.
I will fill you in.
And if you currently submit quarterly returns, can use this information for the ITSA. No, it's different, as I've just covered. Okay.
Okay. So before we move on, we're now at strategy 7, which is kind of an all-encompassing one that goes on the whole time. But Dean?
Yeah, this one's my personal favourite, as you know,
yes,
Andy. And the strategy is simply titled "Just Say No." I think sometimes, as you know, we get into accountancy because we want to help people, and we like solving problems for people, and we've all got clients that perhaps don't have the means to pay for the full services that we provide, and we just want to help them. But I think right now there's a limit to how much of that you can do for clients that don't have the means to pay. And I think once MTD for ITSA goes live, you are going to find your capacity very stretched if you haven't got everything in place from all the different types of things that we're talking about today. So what about you, Ariona? Are you going to have clients and prospects that you're going to have to be turning away because of what's being introduced with MTD for ITSA?
Unfortunately, yes. we are actually saying no now. If clients are not working in the way that we've set out using the apps and the processes we have, then we're just simply saying we can't work with them. And we've introduced this actually in new client meetings or potential client meetings. We say, this is the way that we work. We'll monitor it for 3 months. If you don't work in this way, we're not going to be able to continue because we can't provide you with the service that we're promising if you don't. And I think something that I guess a lot of people don't realize is by working in this way, you're actually going to start educating your client base to work with you. It's really important how you educate them. I've heard a phrase, everyone deserves the clients they have because you have taught them to be like that. But they can be taught differently. And we did that. Our clients worked completely differently and they have slowly now moved to how we're working as well. But it's important with any new clients that come in, you set that from the onset so they don't kind of stray from that. And if after 3 months it's not working, we say, really sorry, you're great and everything, but it's just not going to work for us to carry on together.
I think the really interesting thing about what you say around that and having the confidence to say no and confidence to dictate to them what they do is that without a plan, you will probably lack the confidence to do it and you will probably never break out of that. And that's why we wanted to put this together, because the importance of having a plan so that you can understand how well prepared you are and what the future is going to look like. You're never going to be able to have the confidence to do things like say no to your clients. So, Dean, where are we next? We've started saying no.
We have started saying no. Now we're going to start saying yes, Andy, because we're now looking at the opportunities that MTD Fritzer might bring to your practice and to your clients. And it's one area now that I work in software that I take a little bit personally, Andy, because in some quarters it's suggested that software companies are lobbying government to introduce this straight away because we want to make loads of money selling software to support MTD. And given that I spent 20 years as a practicing accountant and have now been in the technology industry for 5 years, there's so many similarities between the two industries. And actually, when I was an accountant and now I'm working in software, there are 1,000,001 things I'd rather be doing for our customers than building a brand new system to support a new tax way of working that on the face of it isn't going to benefit clients that much. And I think accountants are probably in the same position in that, yes, you're going to have to raise fees. If you're a compliance-based firm and you do things properly, you are going to make much more money when MTD Fritzer comes in because it's more work, it's more risk for the client. They want you to support them with it. But I'm sure there are much better things you'd rather be doing for the clients than just more compliance work. But there are opportunities, don't you think, Ariona?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this whole piece is really important in terms of how you have this set up in your mind. So I see it as a massive opportunity, not as anything else, because by investing our time in this, getting our clients set up, actually I'm freeing up so much time to analyze the information, whereas before we didn't have that time, right? Because we were too busy just typing everything in, make sure it's correct. Whereas now, seeing as that mundane kind of data entry is gone, I can analyze the information, speak to the client about it, translate it for them, and see what that will mean for their business and how we can actually make a difference. And I think as accountants, we are quite blessed, to be honest, in the position that we are in, because we speak to entrepreneurs on a daily basis. Entrepreneurs who work in different ways for whatever reason, they come up with their own way of doing business and succeed. So we have that amazing insight which we can then kind of take, package and provide to another client who might be in another industry and really make a huge difference. So this is where we should be. And I think as the market changes because of MTD, this is what the role of the accountant will be expected to be, not just providing, here's your tax, this what you've got to pay, but what does this mean for my business? So yes, we'd love to be doing other things, but actually in the long term, I think this is where you're really providing value to your clients.
Yeah, so it's actually a gateway to that type of service that you want to provide for your clients?
It helps to solidify the relationship, right? That's one thing that we found, because now clients will call us up for everything. I'm thinking of doing this. Shall I do it? That shows that they have that trust in you. Your foundation, your relationship with them has really been solidified, and you're going to be there long term, because it's difficult to find that person that you trust. I know we talk about trusted advisor and accountants are and so on, but unless you have that time to have these conversations, it's difficult to get to that level where they become so loyal that they will really never look elsewhere.
Do you also think that when, you know, a lot of accountants will perhaps only speak to their clients once a year, that changing to 5-6 times a year will just inevitably open up different opportunities and different relationships? It's that simple fact.
Honestly, it has to. We actually started calling clients because we had the time, right? Just calling them and saying, hi, how are you doing? Nothing else. No expectation from the phone call. And actually, we came out with a list of things that we can help our clients with, which they weren't aware that we can support them with. And we weren't aware they needed that help. So, you know, just that simple conversation of how are you led to so much more work that we can support. What about 5 times a year where we will have to actually ask them about their business? What's that going to give us?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of going to be inevitable that if you've got it right, if you've got your plan set up, that you're likely to be a lot closer to your clients than you are now. So, Dean, we approach the final strategy. It's probably one of my favourites, but go for it.
Okay. It's the final strategy. It's the last one we have in the document that we cover. But really, it's probably the one that you should look at first, right at the beginning. And the reason we didn't put it right at the beginning is because we wanted people to let them know what they're going to be in for before they enact this final strategy. And this is around appointing an MTD champion for your practice. I think if you're running a small, particularly a small firm, it always falls on a partner or a managing director to take on every new project that comes in and sees it through. And I think if you're the person spinning all these really important plates, some of them are likely to smash at some point. So I'm a real advocate of appointing or giving responsibility to somebody else in the firm to see some of these important projects through. Is that something that you do in your firm, Ariana?
Yeah, absolutely. This is actually in our digitalisation kind of strategy and implementation. I wish I'd have realised earlier, but you live and you learn, right? But when I first kind of communicated to the team that we're going to go digital and we're going to do this and trying to give them kind of my vision and dream, they looked at me like I had 2 heads. They were like, what are you talking about? No one else is talking about this. Everything is working fine. So why do you want to change anything? And I had one particular team member that would say no before I've even started to talk about any kind of app. So super against it. And at this point, you know, I mentioned to you earlier, our team, when we first started the process, out of 25 people, there are only 4 of our team members that are left with us who started this process. And within kind of a few years, that's quite a big kind of a shift in the team. So I was at the point where, you know, they were talking to their friends, no one else is doing it. She's gone crazy. So I'm just going to go somewhere so I can continue with the skills that I have. So at that point, I thought, let me choose the one who is so against it. If I can switch him, then I use him as an example that all of you can. And I had a conversation with him. I said, listen, this is the way that we're going to go. It's, you know, we're not going back. So I would like you to be the one that's going to help me scrutinize the technology, see what would work well for us, why it doesn't, and so on, and then communicate that to the rest of the team. Obviously, that accountability and that responsibility of this role kind of interested him, and he started to really read into the tech. How is it going to make a difference? Not because I told him to, but because he had to. So, and after he got on board, then I said to the team, if he did, all of you can. So, and then bring them also onto the process. I think that's really important, having the team on board when you're choosing the tech, because it holds them accountable. It ensures that if they've told you, yep, we've scrutinized it, this app is going to work well for us and our clients and so on, they can't turn around and say, no, I don't think this is right for us. Why? You told me for X, Y, Z reasons that it is going to be right. So automatically they will want to make this a success and make it work, which helped me out a lot because I couldn't do it all myself. You know, we needed the team backing to really move forward.
And he was the guy who pulled it together for you and kind of delivered the strategy.
Basically.
I love that. And it's a risky strategy. I'm not sure everyone would want to take that strategy, but I love it. And that's we do talk again about that in the guide. And I think having that linchpin, someone whose responsibility is to deliver this, will make a huge amount of difference. So we have got through, that is essentially a very quick run through of the key areas that we're recommending you need to tackle and the decisions you need to make. And like I say, in the guide, we've laid out a timeline and some definitions of done, so you know where you're going with it. So let's get to some of these questions that have come through. Dean, do you want to pick some of these?
Yeah, there's lots of tech questions, lots of Tax Calc questions. How do we use Tax Calc to submit MTD ITSA returns to Hmrc? I think if you look at the launcher within Tax Calc, you'll see a business filer coming soon logo, which if you click on, that tells you information about a business filer product. That's going to be a bridging solution for quarterly submissions. All of the end of year stuff will be built into tax return production because we want that end of year tax return process to be as straightforward and as similar to what you do for existing self-assessment clients today. We've had some suggestions about how to run reports through Tax Calc. So as I mentioned earlier, there are little video explainers to accompany the guide, and links are in the guide for those. So we explain how you use reporting and data mining. And I was having a chat with Ariona earlier today about what fields we could add to make the reporting a bit more robust in terms of identifying which clients will and won't fall under MTD for ITSA. So that's certainly something we're going to look at and work on.
Yes, and the question about the ITSA alert is that one.
Yeah, I think that will stem from the reporting. Obviously, everybody wants or doesn't want to miss a client that should fall under ITSA and then fail to register them and start making quarterly submissions for the client. And that's obviously very important by the kind of questions that are coming in. So yeah, there's lots of great suggestions here on how we might be able to achieve that for the clients. That's certainly something we'll look into. We've had a few questions about the penalty regime for late submissions and whether that is just on submission or accuracy of the information that's being submitted. As things stand, it will just be a cumulative based on late submissions. So you may have heard about the new points-based penalty regime for MTD. There was a slight delay to that being introduced, but that will apply as things stand for MTD for VAT, and those same kind of points mean prizes for Hmrc will apply for MTD for ITSA as well. And I think we've got an article on the website that covers that, taxcalc.com.
I think, given the time, we've only a couple of minutes left, and the volume of questions and the complexity of some of these questions, I think it might be better that we come back to everyone and we will compose an email to answer those questions within the next couple of days. So apologies if we didn't get to some of your questions. Some of them are quite complex and will require quite a lot of detailed answering. Do we want to quickly do the poll?
Yeah, let's do the quick final poll of the day. Hopefully that should be appearing on your screens shortly. Again, just click on the polls link on the bottom right of your screen if that hasn't popped up for you. We're looking at the second half of the webinar, the 5 topics that we discussed there. Which of those concern you most from an MTD for ITSA perspective? Is it educating your clients? Is it bringing your staff up to speed? Is it having to say no to clients and prospects? Is it looking for the positives, the opportunities? Or is it appointing an MTD champion that concerns you most? Let's have a little look at those results. Okay, the resounding leader in this one is educating your clients. Obviously, it's a huge task to undertake in drip feeding information. I'm sure it doesn't help that when delays come into the system, you ramp up to it, you start drip feeding information, and then we suddenly find out it's been pushed back a year or 2 years. We have been speaking to Hmrc, asking them to ramp up their program of educational content, because we feel like they're not putting anything out there on MTD for ITSA that's accessible for your end clients. So it's relying solely on you guys to inform clients. So hopefully we'll see more activity from Hmrc to assist. But yeah, that's by far and away the biggest concern that people on the call have.
I do, on the note of the standard letter, that's a big undertaking to be able to come up with something that would be usable. What I would say is, if you would be willing to assist in coming together to create something like that, please put a note into the question box just to say, I'm willing, I'm happy to help, and we'll get back to you, and it would be great to maybe get your input, because that's what we're all about. But unfortunately, we've come to the end of today's session. I want to thank both my guests, Dean and Ariona, for joining us today. Couldn't have done this without you. Dean was the author, and Ariona was invaluable in creating this guide. We sincerely would thank you for joining us as well. Once again, we will be sending an electronic copy of this to you after this session. We will be following up. There will be other sessions like this where we're going to deep dive into such things as defining your services, which is the next one, slated for the 1st of June, but that may change, so keep an eye out for that. Our series is going to take a short break in May, because primarily we've got Accountex, and I really hope that you can come and see us there, where you'll be able to get a hard copy of this as well, I might add. If, in case you've missed it, Accountex will be taking place on the 11th and 12th of May. You won't be able to miss our stand, and we have got a series. So on Wednesday, we will be doing demonstrations, and deep dives into our product set. And on Thursday, we've got another series, and you can see that on your screen. Please do come and visit us if you are coming by. We will be offended if you don't. But until then, if we don't see you at Accountex, we will see you hopefully on the 1st of June or thereabouts for the next webinar. I wish you all the very best. Thank you.